It's been said that small towns contain the darkest secrets. Sadly, I'd have to agree with that. Listen to this. When I was 6, I lived in a small beach town called Cape May. In fact, I still live here while telling you this. We lived next door to an older couple, the Graysons. My mother always said what a cute couple they were. They were very active in the community, always volunteering and donating their time to serve others. Typical, hardworking American couple. Well, one day, I was coming home from school. I got off the bus and saw a bunch of police cars and ambulances parked in front of the Graysons' house. I saw a paramedic wheeling someone out underneath a white sheet from the Graysons' front door. It turns out, Mrs. Grayson had killed herself. The only problem was, there were 2 gunshots to her head, and even at the age of 6, I knew that this didn't add up. Mr. Grayson was the first immediate suspect. He denied it over and over. There was no initial evidence linking him to the crime, so police could not arrest him. I remember a few weeks passed since the murder. As I would play outside with my friends in the street, I would sometimes see Mr. Grayson staring at me through his front living room window. He would have this deadpan stare, like his eyes were open, but there was no life in them, just empty voids. Our parents said to stay away from Mr. Grayson from now on, and I had no problem with that. About a month after the murder, my dad and I were heading into town for some ice cream. It was the middle of summer, and Cape May had some of the best ice cream places around. We were pulling out of our driveway when we saw Mr. Grayson sitting in his car, waving at us from the driver's side seat. We ignored his wave, backed out, and drove into town. When we got back home, police and ambulances were littered in front of Mr. Grayson's house. Again, the paramedics were wheeling someone out underneath a white sheet. It turns out, Mr. Grayson parked his car in his garage while it was still on. He had killed himself by carbon monoxide. Here's the part that still haunts me to this day. The white sheet that was covering Mr. Grayson slipped a bit, and I briefly saw his face. Even though he was dead, he had this huge grin, almost like he was going to burst out laughing at any moment, but couldn't. They found a note attached to his windshield, confessing that he indeed killed his wife and then killed himself. He blamed it on the voices in his head that told him to do it. Even to this day, we still talk about the Grayson murders. In such a small beach town like ours, stories like this don't ever go away. What do you think causes people to murder? It's a tough question, I know, and it's something I don't think we'll ever fully understand. But listen to this. This story takes place in the summer of 2017. My family and I lived in Ocean City, New Jersey. It's a family beach town with relatively no crime. It's even a dry island. It was June, and a couple of my friends and I were hanging out at the beach. We were listening to music and talking about being seniors next year when we heard screaming. We looked all around. My first thought was that someone was being attacked by a shark. But as I looked closer, there was a mom with 2 children pointing out into the ocean by some rocks. And even from where I sat with my friends on the beach, I could see what she was pointing at. Floating face up were 2 dead bodies. I remember the lifeguards blowing their whistles and clearing everyone back. In about 5 minutes, the beach was littered with paramedics, lifeguards, and police. A police boat was able to scoop up the bodies and bring them to shore. And at this point, my friends and I had no idea how these people died and were just in utter shock. We had never seen something like this in our small town before, but we soon got our answers. On the news later that night, we found out the 2 bodies were actually a married couple. They had come down to Ocean City for a week's vacation with their 2 sons. It turns out, their 2 sons didn't want to leave the beach town and begged their parents to buy a house down here. Their parents explained they couldn't afford it, but maybe one day. This answer did not sit well with the 2 sons. Enraged that their parents would not buy them a beach house, they attacked them in their sleep. They had beaten them so badly that they actually killed them. Not wanting to get in trouble, the 2 sons dragged their bodies in the dead of night and threw them into the ocean. They were only caught because the realtor who rented the house came in the next morning and found the boys sitting at the kitchen table. When the realtor asked where their parents were, they confessed to what they had done. The sons were only 14 and 16. I remember the TV showing the 2 sons in the back of a police car. Their faces were stone cold. There was no emotion or remorse in their eyes. To this day, I still can't believe that happened. I can't believe they just snapped like that and killed their parents. I'm not sure where they are now. Probably locked up in some mental ward for 30 years if I had to guess. Either way, it's just as haunting now telling you the story as it was back in 2017. Most people don't believe me when I tell this story. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, but I promise it's 100% true. And I lived in a small beach town on the west coast all my life. It was a town where everyone knew everyone. And it was the summer of last year, and I was graduating high school and soon going off to college in the fall. My friend James and I both wanted to leave the town with a bang, so we came up with the genius idea of sneaking into our high school at night. Was this a stupid idea? Absolutely. But James and I were always the kids who wanted to push things to the extreme. We snuck out late on a Saturday night, well past midnight. The school was only a 10-minute walk from our houses. We decided we were going to document it on TikTok in hopes of going viral. We thought once it goes viral, we wouldn't have to go to college and we could live off the residual income. Again, yes, now looking at this idea in hindsight, we were both so stupid. Anyway, we got to the school. I remember it looking like a large dark castle in the moonlight. It was right on the ocean, and we could hear the waves crashing in the distance. We went to the back door by the football field. The door was always faulty, and our school was too cheap to fix it for some reason. After some finesse, we were able to slip into the broken back door and enter the school. It was an exhilarating feeling, being inside an empty school so late, knowing you're breaking the rules. We started running up and down the hallways, goofing off and laughing. We were getting close to the cafeteria when we noticed flickering light. Curious, we poked our heads through the cafeteria doors and looked inside. Here's where it became extremely unbelievable, but I swear this is what happened. We poked our heads in the door and saw at least 20 cloaked figures all standing around a burning fire. We both had to make sure what we were seeing was even real. The hooded figures were chanting some weird hum, and that's when I saw they were burning some kind of animal in the middle of the fire. James gasped at the sight, and one of the hooded figures turned around. We froze, and that's when every hood turned to face us. Without hesitation, we sprinted for our lives back out of the school. We did not stop sprinting until we made it back home. James showed me his phone and the video footage that he got. What he recorded was shaky and not great quality at all. We decided at that moment we wouldn't tell anyone what we saw. Without the footage, who would believe us? And frankly, by us telling others, we would be admitting to breaking and entering. We didn't leave for college for another few weeks, but in between that time, James and I started to notice that many animals started to go missing in our town. I mean like hundreds. They were posted all over town, on Facebook, and in storefronts, and many were even found to be mysteriously drowned in the ocean. I know it may be a stretch, but I truly believe that those hooded figures in the school that night by the fire are responsible for all the animal disappearances and deaths. Fortunately, I moved away for college the next 4 years and did not have to deal with the situation back home. And since no one will believe me, that's why I'm sharing this story anonymously. Good night.